Welcome to James of Stoic Wisdom. While Western news outlets were still trumpeting the military might of the United States and Israel's right to self-defense, an unprecedented event unfolded in the Middle East. Iran launched a direct attack on the largest U.S. military base, Al-Udeid, located right in the heart of Qatar. No diplomatic warnings, no verbal posturing, just real missiles, real guidance systems, and a clear message from Tehran: we are not afraid. Al-Udeid, a symbol of U.S. military presence in the Gulf, long touted as an impregnable fortress, suddenly became the stage for a humiliation that could not be ignored. Missiles tore through Doha's night sky, forcing the U.S. to activate its Patriot and THAAD defense systems as if in a real-world stress test. But here's the bitter twist: not a single life was lost. Why? Because Iran had subtly tipped off Qatar, allowing the U.S. to evacuate personnel beforehand, a battlefield message delivered with polite precision yet steely resolve. "We can strike at your heart," Iran signaled, "but we don't want you dead. We want you embarrassed." Iran called this a holy war's blessing, but in truth, it was a masterfully executed diplomatic slap, causing no casualties yet exposing the hollowness of America's so-called absolute dominance. This wasn't Iran's first such move. After the U.S. assassination of General Qasem Soleimani in 2020, Iran fired directly at the Ain al-Assad base in Iraq, a pre-warned retaliation that still made it clear: we don't stay silent out of fear, but to prepare more thoroughly. America's close ally, Israel, remained conspicuously silent as the U.S. base in the Middle East was left exposed. Perhaps because Tel Aviv was grappling with its own confusion, Iran, far from being defeated, had dared to strike the U.S. So, who would be the target of the next blow? The entire Middle East trembled, not from the destructive power of weapons, but from Iran's quiet yet ironclad declaration: enough. We're done running. The U.S. had just been gently reminded by Iran's missile barrage at Al-Udeid. Before the sweat could dry, Russia and North Korea emerged like ancient specters, stepping from the shadows to rewrite the rules of the game. In the geopolitical chessboard, the only thing more terrifying than an enemy is their allies. And this time, Iran was not alone. Russia didn't need lengthy speeches. They moved weapons. While the White House debated whether Iran had crossed a red line, in Moscow, that line had long been erased. Military satellites captured convoys carrying S-400 and Nebo-M systems heading toward Syria. Russia's navy deployed a destroyer, Marshal Shaposhnikov, to the Mediterranean. No announcement, no fanfare, just a simple: we're here. A chilling statement from Russia's foreign ministry followed: Iran has the right to self-defense. If the law doesn't protect them, we will. North Korea didn't need guns. A few words sufficed to keep the Pentagon awake. KCNA, their state media, issued a classic North Korean statement: if the U.S. empire continues to suppress a sovereign nation's right to exist, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea will not stand idly by. Accompanying the statement were images from a test site, showing a mock warhead being fitted onto a launch platform. Pyongyang may not set foot in the Middle East, but it can open a deterrence front in East Asia, forcing the U.S. to split its resources. When the U.S. backed Israel's bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities, they called it regional security. But when Iran struck back, it was suddenly illegal provocation. Russia and North Korea rejected this one-sided narrative, and this time, Iran refused to bow. While the world awaited a ground invasion or at least some IRGC disarmament, what happened next made everyone chuckle. President Donald Trump, out of nowhere, posted on Truth Social a call for a comprehensive ceasefire. Yes, amid the smoke still rising over Qatar's skies, Trump, the man who once vowed Iran would pay dearly, now extended a handshake to both Iran and Israel for a draw. "We've secured a total ceasefire. Iran stops first, Israel follows, and both end the war within 24 hours, Trump's post read at 2 o'clock in the morning, Washington time. No one knows how many laughed, but surely many in Tehran raised a glass of hot tea, while those in Tel Aviv were left disillusioned. The bizarre timeline: 6 hours to finalize the mission, 12 hours for Iran to cease fire, 12 hours later for Israel, and 24 hours later, the world celebrates. If this were a Hollywood script, it'd be panned as absurd. But penned by Trump, it's called strategy. The US declared victory. Iran said nothing, only smiled. J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, appeared on TV as if he'd just won the Super Bowl. "We've completely destroyed Iran's nuclear program without losing a single soldier, an absolute victory." The problem? International observers saw no evidence of Iran's nuclear program being obliterated, only Iran standing tall, firing missiles, and sitting at the negotiating table with its head held high. A European analyst quipped, "If this is victory, maybe the US should win like this more often." In reality, this deal wasn't a victory but an admission of defeat cloaked in diplomatic language. The US struck but couldn't finish. It retaliated but didn't dare escalate. And when Russia and North Korea stepped in, America realized it could no longer play the sole intimidator. So, they slammed on the brakes overnight, not for peace, but to avoid losing control. The battlefield fell silent, but the backroom simmered like a pot on low heat. If we must name the master chess player in this game, it's neither the US nor Israel, it's Iran. Why? Their forces remain intact, their missile infrastructure stands, their allies span the Gulf, and most crucially, they forced the US to back down without felling a single American soldier. While Israel's Gantz demanded Tehran's annihilation and the US dropped bombs like a B-movie action flick, Qatar quietly mediated. According to Reuters, Iran authorized Qatar to represent it fully in talks with the US and Israel. The US stayed silent, invisible, letting the president post a peace tweet on social media, as if waking up to a changed world. America thanked Iran for warning them before striking Al-Udeid. A statement that sounds like a joke but is true, and it says it all. The US wasn't just hit without retaliating, they thanked their attacker. If there were a contest for diplomacy under duress, Washington would take gold. Instead of rage or self-destruction, Iran struck just enough to deter, not enough to provoke a full US counterstrike. They fired missiles but gave warning. They retaliated but left an exit. They negotiated, but as ones who just proven they weren't easily bullied. If this were poker, Iran feigned weakness, then flipped their cards at the perfect moment, forcing the US to fold. Israel, expecting to devour Tehran with US backing, was left alone at the feast, fork untouched. Tel Aviv thought it could count on America, only to see the US slip away as Russia and North Korea entered, leaving Israel alone in the crosshairs of war's heat. "You promised to fight with me, but you bailed as I drew my gun," Israel might say. The world calls this multilateral diplomacy, but Iran simply calls it winning without firing a shot, making the enemy holster their weapon. If anyone thinks Trump's midnight ceasefire was the end, they haven't lived long enough to know that in the Middle East, peace is just a fancy term for pausing to plot. Iran, all too familiar with the West's hollow handshakes, isn't relaxing during this 24-hour truce. They're still calculating, still preparing. Israel, preaching peace while calibrating UAVs, shot down an unidentified drone near the Golan Heights just hours after the ceasefire. In southern Lebanon, 2 rockets landed near Kiryat Shmona, launcher unknown. The U.S. base at Al-Assad, Iraq, took light mortar fire, unclaimed. Analysts call these probing attacks. Those who've tracked Iran's strategy know it's a subtle reminder, the game isn't over. Unlike Washington, where every rumor is milked by the media, Iran chooses absolute silence. No rousing speeches, no victory parades, just a leaked remark from an internal meeting, reported by Fars News. "We'll pause for now, but we don't forget. When the time comes, we'll remind them who started this." North Korea, less restrained, declared via KCNA, "If the US errs again, we will act." Their statement post-deal was blunt: "We are not bound by the US-Israel agreement. If Iran needs us, we'll be there, not with words, but with equipment." That phrase, "with equipment," is both cryptic and chilling. Does it mean UAVs, Musudan missiles, or advanced uranium enrichment tech? A pause isn't peace. It's time to adjust sights, check supply lines, and wait for the other side to slip. Iran isn't the one slipping. The ceasefire night has passed, and Washington's self-congratulatory speeches have faded. But the big question lingers: what did the US really gain, besides panicking and calling it strategy? Trump claims Iran's nuclear capabilities were wiped out without spilling American blood. Yet Iran stands firm, unbowed. Missiles remain unfired. UAVs still patrol. Hezbollah hasn't disarmed. Most tellingly, Iran hasn't signed any pledge to abandon its nuclear program. So, people ask, is this victory or just a pretend win? If it's a true victory, why thank Iran for the missile warning? If the situation is under control, why does Israel feel abandoned in the battlefield like a strategic orphan? A former Israeli general bitterly told the media, "We thought we were allies, but it seems we were just the opening act in America's show." In Washington, pundits who comment after the fact are busy praising Trump for stopping the war in time, like a boxer, dazed by a counterpunch, retreating to his corner and telling the crowd, "I didn't lose, I'm pivoting to meditation." The Iranians? They don't need to talk. They survived, and that's victory enough. After more than 40 years of sanctions, isolation, threats, and assassinations, Iran has learned one thing: the best way to survive is to never trust the peace talks of those holding knives. They don't cheer victory or celebrate, they stand still, watching the US retreat and Israel taste defeat. The curtain falls. America withdraws quietly. Who's the main character? The audience knows. Israel, with dreams of toppling Tehran, is left behind. The US, with bold claims, retreats, leaving words no one remembers. Iran remains, standing in the Muslim world as proof that holding the strongest weapons doesn't guarantee the final say. Thank you for joining us on James of Stoic Wisdom. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more in-depth geopolitical analysis. Welcome back to James of Stoic Wisdom. The missile strike on Al-Udeid and the subsequent ceasefire orchestrated by President Trump are not just isolated events but part of a larger geopolitical tapestry that reveals the fragility of global power dynamics. This segment dives deeper into the leak of Iran's calculated strike, its implications, and what it means for us as observers in a world teetering on the edge of redefined alliances and power struggles. Analysis of the leak. The revelation that Iran warned Qatar before striking Al-Udeid was no accident. According to sources cited by Reuters, this information likely came from within Qatar's diplomatic channels, possibly as a deliberate signal to the West that Iran's actions were not reckless but strategic. The leak served a dual purpose. It showcased Iran's ability to strike a heavily fortified U.S. base while emphasizing their restraint in avoiding casualties. This calculated disclosure amplified Iran's diplomatic leverage, portraying them as a power capable of precision and mercy, a narrative that contrasts sharply with Western depictions of Iran as a rogue state. The leak also exposed vulnerabilities in U.S. intelligence, as the Pentagon was caught off guard despite its vast surveillance network. This raises questions about the reliability of Western intelligence in predicting Iran's moves, especially when allies like Russia and North Korea provide technological and strategic support. The leaked remark from Iran's internal meeting, reported by Fars News, about not forgetting who started the conflict, suggests that Tehran is playing a long game, using leaks to shape global perceptions without overt propaganda. Geopolitical context. This incident underscores a shift toward a multipolar world where the U.S. no longer holds unchallenged dominance. Russia's deployment of S-400 systems and North Korea's veiled threats of equipment support highlight a growing axis of resistance against Western hegemony. Iran, backed by these powers, is no longer a regional player but a pivotal actor in a global standoff. The Middle East, already a powder keg of religious, economic, and colonial tensions, is now a proxy battleground for larger powers. Russia's military movements in Syria and North Korea's posturing in East Asia stretch U.S. resources thin, forcing Washington to juggle multiple fronts. Qatar's role as a mediator, despite hosting Al-Udeid, reveals the complex web of alliances in the Gulf, where economic interests often trump ideological loyalties. The ceasefire, brokered through Qatar, also signals a decline in U.S. diplomatic clout, as America relied on a third party rather than direct talks. This shift emboldens other nations, like China, which, though silent in this crisis, benefits from a weakened U.S. presence in the Middle East, aligning with its Belt and Road ambitions to control energy corridors. Reflective perspective: for those of us watching from afar, this crisis prompts a deeper question: what does it mean to live in a world where power is no longer guaranteed by military might alone? Iran's ability to strike, warn, and negotiate without losing ground challenges the Stoic principle of controlling what is within our power. As individuals, we cannot dictate global events, but we can cultivate discernment, questioning the narratives fed to us by media and governments. The U.S. called this a victory, yet Iran emerged stronger. This paradox reminds us to seek truth beyond headlines, to reflect on the cost of blind trust in authority. Moreover, this event asks us to consider our role in a globalized society. If peace is merely a pause, as Iran's actions suggest, how do we prepare for a future where stability is fragile? The Stoics teach us to focus on virtue and reason, yet in a world of missiles and diplomatic feints, we must also demand accountability from those shaping our world. Iran's survival, despite decades of sanctions, mirrors the resilience we can cultivate in our lives, standing firm amid adversity, not by force, but through calculated restraint. What can we, as global citizens, do? We can start by staying informed, questioning official accounts, and fostering dialogue that bridges divides. The Middle East's turmoil is a mirror of our own challenges: trust betrayed, intentions obscured, and peace fleeting. Let's reflect: how can we build a world where strength lies not in weapons, but in mutual respect? Share your thoughts below. Has America lost its edge, or is this ceasefire a pragmatic step toward peace? And what can we learn from Iran's defiance? Subscribe to James of Stoic Wisdom for more reflections on the forces shaping our world. SS